Not every motorcycle gets to ride off into the sunset. Some are left behind, ignored, overstocked, and underappreciated. These are the bikes dealers can't unload and riders won't touch. Today, stick around till the end. Trust me, you don't want to end up buying the last bike. Number 14. Suzuki GSX 250R. In a crowded field of entry-level sport bikes, this one barely makes a ripple. Designed to attract new riders with sleek bodywork and approachable ergonomics, it falls short where it matters most: performance. Powered by a 248 cubic centimeter parallel twin engine, it delivers a modest 25 horsepower and 17 pound-feet of torque. The chassis is supported by conventional telescopic forks in the front and a single rear monoshock, delivering an average ride feel with minimal feedback. Stopping power comes from a single front disc and rear disc setup, with anti-lock braking available in some variants. Tipping the scales at 392 pounds, it is heavier than some of its rivals, despite offering less performance. The ergonomics are fairly upright and comfortable for longer commutes, but sport-minded riders will quickly notice the lack of throttle response and top-end power. Retailing for $4,999, it seems like a deal on paper. However, when better-performing bikes are available for just a few $100s more, this machine becomes hard to justify. It is often overlooked by both beginner riders and dealerships alike. Some stores no longer even bother showcasing it on the floor, and it rarely moves unless paired with deep financing deals. In the end, it is a motorcycle built to look fast, but not built to deliver, and in today's market, that disconnect has put it on the edge of extinction. And if you think that one's outdated, wait until you see the next bike that's been using the same frame since the early 2000s. Number 13. Honda Shadow Phantom. There was a time when this bike helped define the middleweight cruiser segment, but that era is long gone. Beneath its blacked-out bobber-inspired look is a 745 cubic centimeter V twin engine that puts out 44 horsepower and 47 pound-feet of torque. The experience is smooth but uninspiring, especially when stacked against more modern options with improved ride dynamics and updated tech. A 5-speed gearbox and shaft final drive help with low-maintenance ownership but also add to its dated character. Suspension duties are handled by basic telescopic forks up front and dual shocks in the rear with no adjustability. Braking is equally behind the times, featuring a single disc in the front and a rear drum setup that feels out of place on a bike at this price point. With a curb weight of 549 pounds, it is neither light nor particularly agile. Riders over 6 feet often find the ergonomics tight, and the overall ride begins to feel cramped and jittery on longer routes. The price tag of $8,399 pushes it into dangerous territory. Competing cruisers offer more power, better brakes, and updated features for the same money or even less. Even Honda's own Rebel series now feels like a better deal. While some older riders still appreciate the Phantom for its no-nonsense approach, younger buyers and dealers are walking away. But some bikes do not fade quietly. They crash hard. And that's exactly what happened with this next model. Share your ride and favorite bike in the comments. We want to hear from you. And if this content's your style, hit that like button and subscribe. Number 12. HarleyDavidson Sportster 72. Chopper-inspired style once made this model stand out, but flashy looks alone could not save it from the realities of daily riding. Featuring a 783 cubic centimeter V twin engine, it delivered 49 horsepower and 54 pound-feet of torque adequate on paper, but underwhelming on the road. What really held it back was a combination of form-over-function design choices. A narrow front wheel, limited suspension travel, and a small 2.1-gallon fuel tank created a ride that looked aggressive but lacked practicality. The frame sat low, and while that appealed to riders looking for the classic slammed silhouette, it also compromised handling. Suspension came courtesy of standard telescopic forks up front and dual shocks at the rear, both with short travel and minimal adjustability. Braking consisted of a single disc in the front and a single disc in the rear. Functional but unremarkable. Curb weight landed at 548 pounds, giving the bike a solid feel, but also contributing to sluggish low-speed maneuvering. While the peanut tank and mini-ape handlebars captured old-school charm, longer rides exposed just how stripped down and unforgiving the experience could be. With a retail price hovering near $10,199 before its discontinuation, the 72 struggled to justify its cost when measured against more comfortable and better-performing cruisers. As riders moved toward more versatile machines, this model simply could not evolve. It faded out of Harley-Davidson's lineup with little fanfare, and even die-hard fans rarely mention it anymore. And speaking of bikes that vanished without a fight, this next one could not outrun its own reputation. Need better gear than these bikes? We've handpicked helmets, jackets, and tools worth owning. Check the links in the description. Number 11. BMW G310R. This lightweight roadster entered the scene with high expectations. Backed by a global brand and aimed squarely at the beginner market, it should have been a category leader. Instead, it fell short in ways that matter. The G310R is powered by a single-cylinder, 313 cubic centimeter engine producing 34 horsepower and 20 pound-feet of torque. The suspension system consists of an upside-down front fork and a rear monoshock, both tuned for urban comfort more than aggressive riding. Braking duties are handled by a single disc in the front and another in the rear, both equipped with standard anti-lock braking systems. The frame is compact and its curb weight comes in at 364 pounds, making it one of the lighter options in the category. Ergonomically, it offers an upright seating position and a narrow tank, which works well for commuting, but leaves little room for longer rides or spirited cornering. With a price tag of $5,095, the G310R costs more than many of its Japanese competitors that offer better dealer support, higher resale value, and more robust aftermarket ecosystems. BMW enthusiasts may be tempted by the badge, but the reality is that this bike never found a firm footing in the market. Owners often report difficulty sourcing parts and inconsistent dealership service. Over time, the G310R became more of a stepping stone bike that riders outgrew quickly rather than one they kept or recommended. It is a machine with the right intentions, but the wrong execution. Now let us head from German disappointment to a Japanese cruiser that is barely clinging on. Number 10. Yamaha V-Star 250. For riders looking to enter the cruiser world, this machine has long offered a lightweight, approachable platform, but in today's motorcycle market, its appeal has all but vanished. Powered by a 249 cubic centimeter air-cooled V twin engine, it delivers just 21 horsepower and 15 pound-feet of torque. That performance places it firmly at the bottom of the entry-level class. The 5-speed transmission is simple, but shifting can feel clunky at higher speeds, especially on highways where the engine struggles to keep pace with traffic. The bike rides on a narrow chassis with conventional front forks and dual shocks in the rear. Weighing just 325 pounds, it is extremely manageable, which makes it popular in motorcycle safety courses. However, that same lightness paired with limited power and basic suspension makes it feel unstable at higher speeds. Braking is handled by a single disc up front and a rear drum, an outdated setup that further highlights how little the platform has evolved. While it is undeniably beginner-friendly, experienced riders will find it lacking in both thrill and substance. With a starting price of $4,999, it may seem like an affordable cruiser, but even new riders are skipping it in favor of more capable options. Competitors like the Honda Rebel 300 offer better tech, stronger performance, and modern styling at a similar price point. Dealerships often keep just one or two of these units on hand, and they tend to sit for months. And while this one fades from disinterest, the next bike is failing because it promised too much and delivered too little. Number 9. Kawasaki W800. With its classic British styling and chrome-heavy design, this motorcycle was built to turn heads. It delivers vintage appeal in a modern package, but that charm comes at a cost. The air-cooled vertical twin engine displaces 773 cubic centimeters and produces 47 horsepower with 44 pound-feet of torque. While those numbers seem decent on paper, the real-world ride tells a different story. Acceleration is sluggish, and passing power on the highway feels limited, especially when riding two-up. The bike is built with standard telescopic forks in the front and twin rear shocks, providing a soft, relaxed ride more suited to leisurely weekend trips than aggressive commuting. Braking is managed by a single disc at both the front and rear, with anti-lock braking included as standard equipment. Tipping the scales at 496 pounds, it is not overly heavy, but the narrow tires and upright stance limit confidence in corners. Riders praise the low seat height and smooth engine, but those features are not enough to keep the W800 relevant. With a price of $9,999, it is caught between segments. It is too slow and heavy for beginners but lacks the power and edge demanded by experienced riders. Many find themselves wondering who the W800 is really for. Most dealerships report slow movement on these models, and it rarely makes the shortlist for riders comparing options. It lives in a strange space, neither retro enough to be collectible nor modern enough to be competitive. As other bikes in its class continue to evolve, this one risks being left behind entirely. From confused identity to overbuilt excess, this next bike is simply too much for too few. Number 8. Honda N4 Voltus. When this machine rolled onto showroom floors, it looked like nothing else in the motorcycle world. The N4 Voltus drew inspiration from futuristic animation, sporting aggressive angles, a low-slung profile, and a bold front fairing that gave off a sci-fi vibe. But once the novelty wore off, riders were left with a bike that was difficult to categorize and even harder to sell. It uses a 670 cubic centimeter parallel twin engine, producing 54 horsepower and 47 pound-feet of torque. Weighing in at 561 pounds, the N4 Voltus is neither lightweight nor particularly nimble. The braking system features a single disc in the front and rear with standard anti-lock braking. Suspension is handled by a conventional front fork and a rear monoshock, both tuned for casual road use rather than spirited riding. The riding position, with forward foot controls and an oddly reclined seat angle, is more cruiser than sport, which confused potential buyers even further. While the bike came with a dual-clutch transmission that offered both manual and automatic modes, most traditional riders did not embrace it. The bike carried a starting price of $10,999, putting it in competition with better-equipped cruisers and sport tourers. Despite its technical innovations and polarizing design, the N4 Voltus struggled to find a real audience. It ended up being more of a showroom conversation piece than a legitimate sales performer. As dealers phased it out, it quietly faded into obscurity, remembered only by collectors and fans of futuristic oddities. Now let's shift from futuristic failure to a vintage design that's lost its modern meaning. Number 7. Royal Enfield Bullet 500. Few motorcycles can claim a legacy as long as this one. Originally produced in the mid-20th century and continuously refined over decades, this classic thumper once stood as a symbol of timeless motorcycling. But in today's market, its age finally caught up with it. Powered by a 499 cubic centimeter single-cylinder engine, it produced 27 horsepower and 30 pound-feet of torque. With a curb weight of 420 pounds, the Bullet 500 is relatively light for a classic-style machine. It uses a single front disc and a rear drum for braking, along with traditional telescopic forks and dual rear shocks for suspension. The ride is nostalgic but harsh, especially on uneven pavement. Although some riders appreciate its mechanical simplicity, the lack of refinement, noticeable vibration, and bare-bones tech make it a tough sell for anyone accustomed to modern standards. It simply lacks the polish and engineering quality required to remain competitive in today's global motorcycle scene. Priced at $5,199, it was once seen as a great way to get into retro riding without breaking the bank. But as emission regulations tightened and expectations changed, even Royal Enfield had to admit the platform had run its course. Production officially ended, and many markets no longer support it. While die-hard fans still search for well-preserved examples, most riders have moved on to machines that deliver the look of the past with the refinement of the present. And while some bikes struggle with outdated charm, this next one is being smothered by its own high price tag. Number 6. Ducati Scrambler 62. There was a lot of excitement when this model was announced, but that excitement didn't last long. Marketed as an accessible option for younger riders and new Ducati fans, it lacked the edge and value that riders were hoping for. Powering the bike is a 399 cubic centimeter air-cooled one-twin engine that delivers 41 horsepower and 25 pound-feet of torque. While those numbers are respectable for an entry-level motorcycle, they are overshadowed by rivals in the same price range that offer more performance and refinement. It shares the same basic chassis and styling cues as the larger Ducati Scrambler models, but with cheaper materials, stripped-down features, and a less refined finish. The brakes include a single front disc with with a radial-mounted 4-piston caliper and a single disc in the rear, supported by standard anti-lock braking. The suspension uses non-adjustable front forks and a preload adjustable rear monoshock. At 307 pounds dry weight, it is light and nimble, but that advantage is lost when paired with sluggish throttle response and an uninspired engine note. The biggest issue was price. At $7,995, it came dangerously close to more powerful scramblers and even some full-size bikes from other brands. Buyers quickly realized they could get a better machine for just a few $100s more, and dealers struggled to justify its place in the lineup. The 62 was not a bad bike. It just did not have a clear purpose or value proposition. Today, it rarely appears on dealership floors, and it remains one of Ducati's most overlooked models of the last decade. Up next is a bike that came with real promise, then crashed straight into a wall of indifference. Number 5. HarleyDavidson Street 750. This was supposed to be the gateway bike for a new generation of riders, but things didn't go according to plan. Built with urban streets in mind, the Street 750 featured a 1,200 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled V-twin engine producing 66 horsepower and 43 pound-feet of torque. While those numbers sound decent for city riding, the overall performance and build quality left much to be desired. Braking is handled by a single front disc and a single rear disc, supported by optional anti-lock braking. Suspension comes in the form of conventional forks up front and twin shocks at the rear, both of which are non-adjustable and fairly soft. The curb weight lands around 515 pounds, which makes the bike manageable, but not particularly light for its size. Ergonomically, it felt cramped for taller riders, and the minimalist seat and peg placement limited its comfort over long distances. The styling took cues from the cruiser category, but lacked the muscle and detail that longtime Harley fans expect. Priced at $7,599, it was meant to offer a budget-friendly way into the Harley-Davidson brand. But in trying to chase younger urban buyers, the company forgot the core values that made Harley iconic: quality, identity, and lasting appeal. The Street 750 quietly faded from the lineup after years of lukewarm reception and poor sales. It is now a cautionary tale of what happens when a legendary brand steps too far outside its own legacy without a clear vision or direction. From a Harley that tried to break the mold to a Triumph that forgot what made it great. Number 4. Triumph Thunderbird. Sitting somewhere between a heavyweight cruiser and a touring motorcycle, this machine struggled from the very beginning to define its role. At its core is a 1,600 cubic centimeter parallel twin engine producing 86 horsepower and 108 pound-feet of torque. While those numbers sound promising on paper, the riding experience often failed to match expectations. The throttle response feels muted, and the bike's overall performance lags behind other premium offerings in the same segment. Riders who wanted real touring comfort often opted for more refined options, while cruiser fans found it too bulky and lacking soul. The frame is large and heavy, pushing the curb weight to over 769 pounds. Its long wheelbase and raked-out front end give it visual presence, but also contribute to its sluggish handling. Suspension components include a traditional telescopic front fork and twin rear shocks, tuned for comfort but not for spirited riding. Braking is managed by twin discs up front and a single disc at the rear, providing decent stopping power but not enough to hide the Thunderbird's heft. Despite Triumph's attempt to market it as a premium alternative to American cruisers, it never achieved widespread loyalty among U.S. buyers. With a starting price of $13,500 when it was still in production, it found itself competing against better established names offering more tech, brand loyalty, and dealer support. Eventually, it faded from Triumph's lineup without fanfare, a victim of its own indecision. Now we move from forgettable to outright frustrating, especially when the design was there, but the execution failed. Number 3. Suzuki Boulevard M90. Caught between its more powerful sibling and more affordable cousins, this motorcycle has spent most of its life overshadowed. Powering the M90 is a 1,452 cubic centimeter V twin engine that delivers 75 horsepower and 84 pound-feet of torque. While that engine should pack enough punch for most riders, the overall ride quality is vague and uninspiring. It lacks the aggressive muscle of the M109R and the nimble handling handling of the smaller boulevard models. That in-between status has left it stranded, neither bold enough for thrill seekers nor relaxed enough for casual cruisers. The chassis is built for size with a long profile and bulky proportions. Curb weight lands at 727 pounds, and the bike's ergonomics are stretched out for long-haul comfort. Suspension is handled by a telescopic fork in the front and a link-type single shock in the rear. Braking includes dual discs up front and a single disc in the rear, but without modern enhancements like cornering, anti-lock braking, or ride modes, it feels dated. The styling remains handsome with a strong stance and clean lines, but that alone is not enough to justify showroom space anymore. With a price tag around $11,499 when it was still widely available, buyers often looked at more refined cruisers in the same category. As a result, dealerships rarely even bother keeping one on display. Inventory sits untouched or gets replaced entirely by faster-selling models. The M90 never got the updates it needed to stay relevant, and it shows. It is the kind of bike that might have worked in a different era, but today it just does not stand out. And if a forgotten Suzuki is not surprising, wait until you see which Honda cannot get off the lot today. Number 2. Honda CTX 700N. This motorcycle entered the market with an identity crisis and never quite recovered. Equipped with a 670 cubic centimeter parallel twin engine, it produces just 48 horsepower and 44 pound-feet of torque. Its defining feature was the dual-clutch transmission, allowing automatic shifting, a rarity in the motorcycle world at the time. Designed to attract new or returning riders looking for comfort and simplicity, it ended up confusing buyers who expected either performance or character. The low seat height, forward foot controls, and upright riding position made it incredibly easy to ride, but many found it uninspiring and detached from the visceral feel of motorcycling. From a technical standpoint, the CTX 700N features a steel diamond frame, telescopic front forks, and a single rear shock. Braking comes from a single disc in the front and another in the rear, equipped with anti-lock braking in certain trims. Its curb weight is 475 pounds, making it manageable for a wide range of riders. However, its styling, minimalist and unremarkable, failed to generate the kind of excitement typically associated with either touring bikes or cruisers. It felt more like an appliance than a motorcycle, a vehicle engineered for function without passion. With a base price of $7,699, it sat in a difficult position. Riders who wanted a touring experience opted for larger, more engaging models, while commuters and budget-conscious riders turned to lighter, sportier options with more charisma. The CTX 700N never built a loyal following, and many dealerships struggled to sell it. Even today, used models often sit unsold for months. It aimed to be the perfect compromise, but instead landed squarely in a category no one was asking for. Don't let these forgotten models catch you by surprise, like if you think you could still see potential in one of these bikes, and subscribe for more countdowns and expert advice on which motorcycles are worth your attention. And that brings us to number 1, one of the most recognizable names in motorcycling, now facing extinction. Number 1. HarleyDavidson Iron 883. This legendary name once introduced thousands of new riders to the cruiser world, but its time at the top has clearly passed. The Iron 883 is powered by an 883 cubic centimeter air-cooled V-twin engine that makes 50 horsepower and 54 pound-feet of torque. Those numbers, once acceptable in an entry-level cruiser, are now overshadowed by smaller displacement bikes offering better performance and modern technology. The 5-speed transmission, low-slung frame, and minimalist design once made it a top choice for younger riders entering the Harley-Davidson lifestyle. Today, those same traits are seen as limiting. Built on the aging Sportster platform, the Iron 883 features a narrow frame, short travel suspension, and a single-disc front and rear brake system. It weighs 545 pounds and rides with a stiffness that many describe as punishing over long distances. The bike offers no modern rider aids, no traction control, no ride modes, and no infotainment, just raw, stripped-down simplicity. That appeals to some purists. But it falls flat in a market where even basic bikes come standard with useful technology and comfort upgrades. The starting price of $11,999 puts it within reach of far more capable motorcycles, even within Harley-Davidson's own lineup. Riders looking for more power and a better ride are choosing models like the Softail Standard or the Street Bob instead. Once considered the definitive beginner Harley, the Iron 883 is now viewed as outdated, underpowered, and overpriced. These bikes might be fading, but the future of motorcycling is anything but dull. Like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments which of these bikes you think still has a shot at a comeback.